I've made thousands of dollars using the option tool WAVE and using the option tool GEX while day trading. In this video, I'm going to show you exactly how you can implement WAVE and GEX and how to read them so you can start using them for yourself. Because when these two correlate, it will help you tremendously while day trading. WAVE will give you trend, momentum, reversals. GEX will give you price targets, magnet targets, telling you what levels will have consolidation or slower movement. And all this data is based off of the market makers, institutions, unusual whales, whatever it might be. Don't get me wrong, I like to use technical analysis with this, but I like when they both correlate, my TA and my data. That's an A+ setup. Before we get started, make sure to like and sub if you want a chance to win $100. After you like and sub, comment a positive thing either about this video, about me, about Flowtopia, whatever it might be. Comment something positive and I'll be picking a winner in 2 weeks. Okay, let's get into it real quick. WAVE is what tracks the overall net premiums coming into the market. Now you might ask, what's the difference between market sentiment and WAVE? Because they both are tracking calls and puts, right? Well, market sentiment is tracking everything. There's no filters on market sentiment. It's literally tracking everything. So that's why you'll see sometimes calls and puts a little different than the WAVE. WAVE is actually filtered completely differently. WAVE, it caps off at $2 million per trade. It ignores any mid or unknown print. Only clear buy/sell trades go into net premiums. And here's the formula, as you can see. I will never blindly buy just off of what the WAVE is saying. Because yes, this is what market makers are buying/selling, but that's not what's going to drive the price real time, right? It's going to give you an edge on seeing what they're buying, what they're selling, but it has to make sense to an extent. Okay, that was WAVE. Now let's talk about GEX, gamma exposure. Option market makers are trying to basically keep the stock market balance. When we buy calls in the market, that means option makers are selling the calls, but also buying the stock or the share. When traders buy a lot of options, this means that the market makers also have to sell a lot of options, but they are forced to buy the shares or sell the shares of that stock. This adjusting is just called hedging. Now, gamma exposure basically would tell us how sensitive the market makers are around those prices and whether if they're buying or selling that stock as it moves. All right, let's take a look at the negative GEX levels. So when you look at negative GEX levels, this means to tell you that this is where more volatility is going to happen. So I personally like to keep it in simple terms when I'm trying to tell someone that's just now starting to use GEX levels. Think of negative GEX levels as price targets and magnets. And when you actually get to these levels are so much more volatile than the positive levels, because when GEX is negative, market makers are buying as we go down or selling as we go up. So they create more volatility and more chaos. Now let's look at the positive side. The positive side is basically where everything will slow down. This is where you'll see chop levels. This is where you'll see consolidation. This is where you'll see during those lunch hours a price doing absolutely nothing besides just moving sideways or barcoding. That's typically what positive levels are. So in this example, I have an example from June 17th where we had all of it lined up perfectly. So I want to show you how you could line it all up, because when it all lines up, it makes so much more sense. So let's start off with the top left of this example. We have a 597 GEX target. This means that we have the highest negative level at 597. So we know that this could act as a magnet, price target. Hey, in simple terms, support or resistance, whatever it might be. We know that that level is very important. Now, let's look at the top right. We have WAVE. So basically at 10:30-ish, so around 10:30 Eastern, we have WAVE crossing bearish. That means calls start to go down and puts start to rise. So now we have a downside price target, which is that 597 level, and we have puts crossing to the upside. So now we have two confluences just by using data that we might see a downside move just by following the market makers. So obviously we don't only want to use data, you want to use TA as well. Some people only use data sometimes too, but I like to use both. I like to correlate my data and technical analysis, because when those two correlate, that is an A+ setup, and that is a setup everyone should look for. Is data and technical analysis. So looking at SPY here, we have a bear flag or a rising wedge, basically a bearish chart pattern. So now we have a downside target, WAVE telling us that puts are crossing to the upside, So that's bearish. And we have a bearish chart pattern. So all this is leaning towards downside. Okay, so here's about 10:30. You can see 10 o'clock, 11. Here's about 10:30 on the chart on SPY, and that was when it crossed. So obviously we didn't want to enter before it broke out to the downside, because that wouldn't be good. We probably got stopped out on this candle. But we're going to patiently wait for it to break to the downside of this trend line. So we break to the downside of this trend line. This is where typically you would want to enter shorts or puts for that downside move and target that 597 level, because you know that that's a very important level and it's a downside target. And wave's bearish. But yeah, this is exactly how I use wave and GEX in simple terms. And a more in-depth video to learn more of the back end, we'll have to make a whole another YouTube video, because that's going to probably be a lot longer. Now, if you want to come join the Discord where most of Flowtopia people are talking, most of the Flowtopia subscribers are talking, make sure to hit the description down below, discord.gg/oasis alerts. Flowtopia has its own Discord on the way, so stay tuned for that. And Flowtopia also has its own chat room on the actual website on the way as well. So that's going to be really cool. But if you want all these tools, make sure to go to flowtopia.co. You'll get all these tools and a lot more that I'll have to make videos about. So on top1futures.com, if you use the code BRIT, it's up to 50% off on straight to fundeds and evaluation accounts. If you want a lifetime discount, make sure to use code FLOWLIFE on flowtopia.co. And the first 5 people will get a 20% off discount on the lifetime memberships. Everything that I just mentioned will be in the description down below. So if you don't want to hear me yap or you can't understand, make sure to go to the description down below, and there you go. I appreciate y'all. Make sure to like, follow, subscribe, comment for more, and y'all have a great one. See y'all later.